Have you ever imagined how mountains and rivers are created? If so, then join me as we explore a breathtaking African folktale of how the gods transformed a flat, barren earth into a land of majestic mountains and life-giving rivers. Long ago, in the days before the world was shaped as we know it today, the earth lay flat, stretching endlessly in every direction. The land was barren and silent, a vast, featureless expanse with no rivers, no mountains, and no life. The skies above were clear and blue, but the ground below was dry and cracked, lifeless under the unrelenting sun. The gods in the heavens looked down upon the empty world, their hearts heavy with sadness. They knew that something was missing from their creation, something that would bring beauty, movement, and life to the stillness below. The most powerful of these gods was Amani, the god of creation, who held dominion over nature and all living things. He gathered the other gods to discuss how they could transform the barren earth. "This land needs balance," Amani declared, his voice resonating across the cosmos. "It needs contrast, high peaks and deep valleys, flowing waters and sturdy ground. Only then can life truly thrive here." The other gods nodded in agreement, for they too could feel the absence of life and energy in the world below. Among the gods were Nuru, the god of light and warmth, and Kito, the god of strength and rivers. Nuru's light had already filled the sky, but without life on the earth to feel its warmth, it served little purpose. Kito, whose rivers could nourish the land, had no paths to carve, no mountains to flow down. Together, they devised a plan with Amani. They would reshape the earth, creating towering mountains and winding rivers that would bring life and energy to the barren land. Amani stretched his hands across the flat earth, and with a mighty effort, he began to mold the land. The ground trembled and cracked as great mounds of earth rose toward the sky. Slowly, the first mountains began to take shape, towering above the once flat plains. These mountains were vast and majestic, their peaks piercing the heavens and their slopes covered in rich soil. They stood as guardians of the land, watching over the world below. But despite their grandeur, something was still missing. The land was still dry, and the mountains, though imposing, were silent and barren. Amani turned to Kito, the god of rivers, and spoke. "We need water to flow through this land, to nourish the soil and bring life to the valleys below." Kito nodded and plunged his hands into the earth, summoning the waters from deep within its core. With a roar, rivers burst forth from the mountains, their clear, sparkling waters rushing down the slopes and carving paths through the land. The rivers flowed with a powerful energy, winding their way through the valleys and plains, bringing life to the barren soil. As the rivers carved their paths, the land began to change. Green grasses sprouted along the riverbanks, and trees began to grow, their roots drinking deeply from the flowing waters. The once barren plains were now fertile and lush, filled with the sound of rushing water and the rustle of leaves. Life was beginning to take hold. Amani watched with satisfaction as the rivers flowed and the land began to flourish. But still, he sensed that something was missing. The mountains, though majestic, were bare and lifeless. They needed more than just rivers to bring them to life. Amani waved his hands once more, and from the rich soil of the mountains, tall, lush trees began to spring up. Their branches stretched toward the sky, creating forests that covered the slopes in a blanket of green. Birds and animals began to fill these forests, their calls echoing through the trees and bringing sound to the once silent mountains. The rivers, now surrounded by greenery, flowed gently through the valleys, their waters sparkling in the sunlight. The earth, once barren and lifeless, was now alive with movement and energy. The gods watched in awe as their creation came to life, but Amani sensed that their work was not yet done. "We have created balance between the land and water," Amani said, "but there must also be harmony." And so Amani called upon the winds, breathing life into them and sending them to dance between the mountains and rivers. The winds carried the songs of the mountains down to the rivers, whispering tales of strength and endurance. In return, the rivers flowed gently, nourishing the forests and bringing life to the land around them. The balance between the mountains, rivers, and winds brought peace to the earth. As time passed, the rivers continued to shape the land, carving out deep valleys, wide canyons, and fertile plains. The mountains stood tall and proud, their peaks touching the sky, while the rivers flowed below, bringing life to every corner of the land. The gods were pleased with their creation, and they withdrew to the heavens to watch over the earth from afar. But the story of the mountains and rivers did not end there. For in time, the first humans appeared on the land, emerging from the rivers that had been created by the gods. These early humans were strong and wise, their forms shaped by the waters that had nourished the earth. They stood in awe of the towering mountains that surrounded them and the rivers that flowed at their feet. The people knew that the mountains and rivers were gifts from the gods, and they revered them as sacred. They called the mountains guardians of the sky, for they believed that the gods resided on their lofty peaks. The rivers they called bringers of life, for without them, the land would be barren and dry. The people built their homes near the rivers, using the stones from the mountains to build sturdy shelters and tools. Life flourished in the valleys, and the people lived in harmony with the earth. They learned to fish in the rivers, hunt in the forests, and grow crops in the fertile soil. The mountains and rivers provided everything they needed, and the people were grateful for the gifts of the gods. They told stories of how the mountains and rivers had been created by Amani and Keto, and they passed these stories down from generation to generation. But as time passed, some among the people grew greedy. They sought to control the rivers and the land, cutting down the trees recklessly and damming the rivers to suit their own needs. They mined the mountains for stone and metal, stripping them of their strength. The balance that the gods had created began to unravel, and the land grew weak. The rivers, once clear and strong, began to dry up, and the mountains grew silent and cold. The forests, once lush and green, began to wither, their trees falling to the ground in decay. The people, blinded by their greed, did not notice the signs of the land's distress. They continued to take more than the earth could give, and the balance between the mountains and rivers was lost. Amani, watching from the heavens, saw the destruction that the people were causing, and his heart was filled with sorrow. "The people have forgotten the balance of the land," Amani said, his voice heavy with grief. "They have forgotten the gifts we gave them, and now they are destroying the very things that give them life." Tito, too, was angered by the people's greed. "We must remind them of the power of the mountains and rivers," Tito said, his voice as fierce as a rushing river. "If they continue down this path, the land will die, and they will perish with it." The gods knew that they had to act before it was too late. And so, the gods descended to the earth, walking among the people in disguise. They spoke with the elders, telling them stories of the old ways, of the balance that had once existed between the mountains, rivers, and the people. They warned the people of the consequences of their greed, telling them that if they did not change their ways, the rivers would dry up completely, and the mountains would crumble into dust. Some of the people listened to the gods' warnings, remembering the ancient stories that had been passed down to them. They began to change their ways, cutting down fewer trees and allowing the rivers to flow freely once more. They sought to live in harmony with the land, just as their ancestors had done. But others laughed at the gods' words, scoffing at the idea that they could be punished for their actions. And so, the balance continued to deteriorate. The rivers, drained of their strength, began to flood, their waters spilling over the banks and destroying crops and homes. The mountains, weakened by the mining and deforestation, began to crumble, sending boulders crashing into the valleys below. The people were terrified, but still, some refused to believe that their actions were the cause of the destruction. The gods, seeing the continued devastation, decided that a final lesson was needed. Amani summoned a great storm, one that would shake the earth to its core. The skies darkened as clouds gathered over the land, blocking out the sun. Thunder rumbled across the mountains and lightning split the sky. The winds howled, carrying with them the anger of the gods, and the rivers began to swell once more. The storm raged for days, causing the rivers to overflow and the mountains to shake. Landslides tore through the forests, carrying trees and rocks into the valleys. The people watched in horror as their homes were washed away by the floodwaters and buried by the collapsing mountains. They realized too late that they had angered the gods and upset the balance of the land. As the storm continued to rage, the people gathered in the valley seeking refuge from the destruction. The elders, who had heeded the gods' warnings, prayed for forgiveness, begging the gods to show mercy and restore balance to the land. They called out to Amani and Keto, promising to return to the old ways and live in harmony with the earth once more. The gods heard the cries of the people, and Amani, moved by their pleas, decided to give them one final chance. He raised his hand, and the storm began to subside. The winds died down, the rain stopped, and the rivers receded, returning to their normal flow. The mountains, though scarred by the landslides, stood tall once more. Amani appeared before the people, his form towering above them, his voice booming like thunder. "You have seen the power of the mountains and rivers," he said, his eyes blazing with the fire of creation. "Know this. The balance of the earth must be respected. If you take too much, the land will take back what is hers. But if you live in harmony with the land, it will provide for you and your descendants for generations to come." The people bowed before Amani, promising to honor the land and the gods who had created it. They rebuilt their homes, planting trees where forests had once stood, and allowing the rivers to flow freely once more. They lived simply, taking only what they needed from the earth, and giving back to the land through their care and respect. As the years passed, the balance of the earth was restored. The rivers flowed clear and strong, nourishing the land and filling the valleys with life. The mountains stood tall, their peaks shrouded in mist, watching over the people who now lived in harmony with the earth. The gods, pleased with the people's return to the old ways, withdrew once more to the heavens, watching over the land from afar. But the tale of the creation of mountains and rivers did not end there. For the people, remembering the gods' warnings, passed down the story of Amani and Quito to their children and their children's children. They told of the great storm that had shaken the earth and the balance that had been restored. They taught their children to respect the land and live in harmony with it, just as their ancestors had done. In time, the story of the mountains and rivers became more than just a tale of creation. It became a lesson in balance, respect, and harmony. The people learned that the land was a gift from the gods, and that they were its stewards, entrusted with its care. They knew that as long as they honored the land and the rivers, the mountains would stand tall, and the rivers would flow forever. The earth, once barren and lifeless, was now a place of beauty and abundance, filled with towering mountains, flowing rivers, and lush forests. The people thrived, living in harmony with the land and the gods who had shaped it. The balance between the earth and its inhabitants was restored, and the land flourished once more. And so, the tale of the creation of mountains and rivers became a part of the people's heritage, a reminder of the gods' power and the importance of balance. The people continued to tell the story, passing it down through the generations, ensuring that the lessons of the past would never be forgotten. The mountains, standing tall and proud, remained as a testament to the gods' creation, their peaks touching the heavens and their slopes covered in lush greenery. The rivers, flowing clear and strong, brought life to the valleys below, nourishing the land and its people. The gods, watching from the heavens, were pleased with the balance that had been restored. They knew that as long as the people remembered the lessons of the mountains and rivers, the land would continue to flourish, and the people would live in harmony with the earth for generations to come. The people, grateful for the gods' mercy, continued to honor the land and the rivers, planting trees, caring for the soil, and ensuring that the balance of the earth was maintained. They knew that the mountains and rivers were not just physical features of the land, but symbols of the gods' power and the importance of harmony. The tale of the mountains and rivers was told in every village, at every gathering, reminding the people of the gods' creation and the balance that had been restored. The story became a part of the people's identity, a reminder of their connection to the land and the gods who had shaped it. And so, the people continued to live in harmony with the land, taking only what they needed and giving back to the earth through their care and respect. The balance between the mountains, rivers, and the people was maintained, and the land flourished under the gods' watchful eyes. The mountains stood tall, their peaks touching the sky, and the rivers flowed strong and clear, bringing life to the land. The people, now living in harmony with the earth, thrived, their villages filled with abundance and peace. The gods, watching from the heavens, were pleased with the people's return to the old ways, knowing that as long as they honored the land and the rivers, the balance of the earth would be maintained. And so, the tale of the creation of mountains and rivers continued through the ages, a reminder to all that balance, respect, and harmony were the foundations of life itself. A beginning of a life lived in balance with nature, where the mountains stand tall and the rivers flow freely. The story of the gods' creation became more than just a legend. It was a living testament to the power of balance and respect. The mountains and rivers, everlasting, held the secrets of creation in their ancient forms, whispering their wisdom to those who would listen. The tale of creation, passed down through the ages, remained a beacon of harmony, guiding the people in their journey through life. As the seasons passed and the years turned into centuries, the tale of the gods' creation of the mountains and rivers became an integral part of the people's collective memory. Each year, the festival that celebrated the gods' gifts grew in significance, evolving into a grand event that drew people from distant lands. The festival was not only a time of joy, but also a profound expression of gratitude and reverence for the natural world. It became a ritual of renewal, a way for the people to reaffirm their commitment to the balance that had been established. During the festival, the people would craft intricate symbols representing the mountains and rivers. These symbols were woven into tapestries, carved into wood, and painted on walls. Each symbol was a tribute to the gods' creation, a reminder of the harmony that must be maintained. Storytellers and poets would recite the ancient tales, their voices carrying the echoes of the gods' wisdom. The stories served as both entertainment and education, ensuring that the lessons of the gods remained alive in the hearts of the people. The mountains and rivers, revered as sacred entities, were often the focus of pilgrimages. People from various regions would journey to the sacred peaks and flowing waters to seek blessings, guidance, and a deeper connection to the divine. The rivers, considered the lifeblood of the land, were honored with ceremonies where offerings of fruits, flowers, and sacred objects were cast into their currents. The mountains were climbed with great respect, and special rites were performed at their summits to honor the guardians of the sky. The connection between the people and the land grew stronger with each passing generation. The festivals, rituals, and daily practices served to reinforce the teachings of the gods. Elders, who were considered the keepers of wisdom, played a crucial role in passing down the knowledge of how to live in harmony with nature. They taught the young about the importance of maintaining balance, respecting the land, and understanding the intricate relationship between the mountains and rivers. In times of hardship, when droughts or floods threatened the land, the people would turn to the ancient stories for solace and guidance. They believed that these natural challenges were tests from the gods, reminders of the need to uphold the balance. By returning to the teachings of the gods, the people found strength and resilience. They would come together to address the challenges, implementing traditional practices and solutions that had been handed down through the generations. The natural world continued to evolve, and so did the stories and practices surrounding it. The mountains, with their ever-changing faces, stood as symbols of enduring strength and resilience. The rivers, with their dynamic flows, represented the ever-present potential for renewal and growth. Together, they formed a living tapestry of creation, an ongoing narrative that connected the past, present, and future. The people's reverence for the gods' creation extended beyond their immediate surroundings. They recognized the interconnectedness of all life and the impact of their actions on the broader world. Environmental stewardship became a fundamental aspect of their culture, influencing how they approached agriculture, resource management, and community living. They understood that the health of the land was directly linked to their well-being and prosperity. Legends of the gods' creation were also preserved in art and architecture. Temples and shrines dedicated to the gods were built near sacred mountains and rivers. These structures were adorned with carvings and murals depicting scenes from the creation story. The artistry was not only a form of worship, but also a way to ensure that the divine narrative was etched into the very fabric of their culture. Each piece of art served as a reminder of the gods' eternal presence and the importance of balance. The gods, though unseen, were believed to be ever watchful, guiding and influencing the world from their celestial realm. The people maintained a deep sense of connection to the divine, expressed through their rituals, prayers, and daily actions. They believed that by honoring the mountains and rivers, they were also honoring the gods and reinforcing the sacred bond that united them. As the world continued to change, the story of the creation of mountains and rivers remained a constant. It was a narrative of divine wisdom and human responsibility, a reminder of the delicate balance that must be maintained to ensure harmony and prosperity. The mountains and rivers, with their timeless presence, continued to inspire awe and reverence, serving as enduring symbols of the gods' gifts and the importance of living in alignment with the natural world. In every sunrise and sunset, in every ripple of the rivers and every whisper of the winds across the mountains, the people felt the presence of the gods. The story of creation was not just a tale of the past, but a living, breathing reality that shaped their lives. It was a story that would be told for generations to come, a legacy of the gods' wisdom and the eternal balance of the earth. And so, the tale of the creation of mountains and rivers carried on through the ages across generations. It was a story of divine artistry and human harmony, a reminder of the power of balance and the sacredness of the natural world. As long as the people remembered and respected the lessons of the gods, the rivers would flow, the mountains would stand tall, and the land would continue to thrive in the grace of creation.